You might be surprised at what Pope Francis taught about personal property and nations and their borders. Hello, welcome to Intermarifica, New Mexico, the channel where we look at things of wonder through the perspectives of faith and reason, philosophy and theology. I'm your host, Daniel Kelly, and today I want to look at the wonder of our own nations, our own countries. And it's one of the most wonderful things that we are, right? That we have. The Catechism talks about our duty to our nation, and piety is the virtue of giving back to these things that we can never in justice give back what they've given us. So piety has to do with our nation. We can't ever give back to our nation what our nation has given to us, our home has given to us. We can't ever give back to our parents what they've given to us. So we try. That's what piety is. And we can never give back to God what He's given to us, right? So I just love this, looking at this idea of our nations. And what made me want to do it today is normally we're in my diocese, we're going through Fratelli Tutti, and every Tuesday and Thursday I've been giving little snips of it on my channel. If you haven't looked at those, go check them out, but little shorts. But when I got up to section 143, it was so rich that I couldn't just put it into a short. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, is Pope Francis's Fratelli Tutti. It's an encyclical I hadn't looked at, given a second look past when he wrote it, because it's very hard to get into. It has dry language at times, kind of falls into one of Pope Francis's weaknesses is that he would fall into kind of speaking like a newspaper, which isn't very compelling. This what G.K. Chesterton called journalese, right? And so it's a little dry and stuff. But in rereading Fratelli Tutti, there's been so much depth that there is, and just really good writing. And I love Pope Francis's writing. So in section 142, Pope Francis is talking about the tension between what we owe, what's important to the local, like our own country, our own village, and the tension between what's good about the global, right, beyond the borders of what we're used to. So I want to start off with what he says there in Fratelli Tutti 142. Pope Francis says, "It should be kept in mind that an innate tension exists between globalization and localization. We need to pay attention to the global so as to avoid narrowness and banality. Yet, very important, we also need to look to the local, which keeps our feet on the ground. Together, the two prevent us from falling into one of two extremes. In the first, people get caught up in an abstract, globalized universe, right? And I've talked about this before in those shorts where Pope Francis speaks again and again against this bad globalism, right? It might surprise you to hear that, but yeah, he speaks again and again against this bad globalism. In the other, so if we're just focusing on the local, they turn into a museum of local folklore, a world apart, doomed to doing the same things over and over, incapable of being challenged by novelty or appreciating the beauty which God bestows upon their borders," right? So we can get into this narrowness where we just focus on our own country, our own village, or our own tribe. Universal fraternity, which is a better way to look at things than globalism, which he condemns a lot. Universal fraternity and social friendship are thus two inseparable and equally vital poles to every society. To separate them would be to disfigure each and create a dangerous polarization. I think we've seen that in our world today, where people just want to focus on the global and our global fraternity, globalism in the bad sense that Pope Francis talks about. On the other hand, there's other people who just, our country, just our country, that's all that's important, just focus on our country, and that's bad. So now, though, that's to set up what he's talking about. But in section 143, which is what I really want to focus on, it's super good and super powerful. The solution to these two extremes is not an openness that spurns its own richness, right? If we're open to other countries too much, and forget our own richness. That's very bad. He goes on. Just as there can be no dialogue with others without a sense of our own identity, so there can be no openness between peoples except on the basis of love for one's own land, one's own people, one's own cultural roots. Right? So he's taking this from, nations and different stuff. This can be so abstract. Let's bring it down to personal relationships. I can't have a good personal relationship with others if I don't have an interiority to myself. And I think because these global relationships and national relationships can be so abstract and so out there, we're like, oh, it's so overwhelming. He brings it down to, okay, but everybody has personal relationships. Let's look at it from there. If we're just all outgoing and have no interior, is that good? No. So we have to have a love of our own land, our own people, and our own cultural roots. Very important. I cannot truly encounter another unless I stand on firm foundations. So we need this really, really strong patriotic love, just like we need a really, really strong sense of ourselves to have relationships with others. I cannot truly encounter another unless I stand on firm foundations. For it is on the basis of these that I can accept the gift that the other brings, and in turn offer an authentic gift of my own, right? We can't offer ourselves unless we have a strong center. And if we have this strong center, I can welcome others who are different and value the unique contribution they have to make, only if I am firmly rooted in my own people and my own culture. Everyone loves and cares for his or her native land and village, just as they love and care for their home and are personally responsible for its upkeep. I love this image of the home that Pope Francis brings up again and again. Our relationship as a nation in the world of nations is a home, and so we can welcome people into our home, but if you leave the door open and people wander in and out, and that's not really a home, that's not really welcoming, right? So we have to, he says, everyone loves their native land, and if you don't, that's a big, big problem. You can't be talking about fraternity with other nations, fraternity with other peoples, unless you have a deep, deep love of your own people, your own nation. The common good likewise requires that we protect and love our native land. We need to protect and love the place where we're from, our native land, our country. And so this, he brings it into this personal where we need to, it's like the relationships that we have with one another. We can't just disregard our own interiority, or else we have nothing to offer to the other, and we can't accept their gift. That's the same with nations. But I wanted, this isn't a new thing that Pope Francis, well, just like everything he says, it's nothing new. He's very grounded in the tradition of Catholic teaching. But this idea of, I think too much our culture says, oh, look, we're just relationships, right? A person is just relationships. Even, I remember my sociology professor would say that, and definitely not as a Christian, but we're just relationships. And a lot of Catholics and Christians say, oh, we're in, what's important is our relationships, is relational. And that is important. But if you get too caught up in that, it's not good. So I want to bring in the philosopher, one of the greatest modern philosophers, if not the greatest, on the person, right, is Norris Clarke. And we know from St. Thomas Aquinas that the persons in the Trinity, what distinguishes them is their relationship. So that's why we've got, well, oh yeah, awesome. We are, relationship is what is important, and it is really important. But as Father Clarke says, who was a Jesuit, just like Pope Francis was, he expounds on this personal part of relationships really well. So Father Clarke says, in his really good Person and Being, his Aquinas lecture from 1993, really good if you haven't read it. But it gets a little philosophy, this gets a little bit deep, so don't worry. You know, we're going to go back to Pope Francis's words if this seems too difficult. But Father Clarke says, To be, like to exist, to be, the essence of existing, is to be substance in relation. So we've got the two poles: substance, what I am, what a rock is. That's what it is. It's rocky nature, my Daniel nature, my human nature. Substance, but in relation. Nothing exists just, I'm not just Daniel, a rock isn't just a rock, a table's not just a table. It exists in its relation to other things. So it's in itself and its relation. And he talks about the difficulty, the danger, if we forget this. Contemporary Western thinkers are not always aware of the metaphysical trap laid long ago by the Buddhists, for those who would reduce the world of multiplicity we live in to nothing but relations. To me, this, with what Pope Francis was talking about, this is the trap of globalism, where we just want everything global. For the personal level, people just want everything to be relations. And he's like, nope, there's a trap there. They rightly argue, and this is the Buddhist philosophy, they argue, if A is nothing but a relation to B, and reciprocally, B is nothing but a relation to A, and so of all things, so that nothing is, but is only a pure relation, right? Relativism, everything's just how it's related to other things. Then nothing has own being, as they say, the Buddhists, right? So nothing has own being. Christians would disagree with that, most Christian philosophy. And all fall together into emptiness, sunyata. Only the non-related, unlimited, and unchanging can really be real, nirvana. And it cannot be spoken about. The Buddhists themselves rejoice in this conclusion, right? That everything dissolves into just this nirvana, this goop, which is the only thing that isn't related to anything, right? So saying everything's related actually, in the end, gets rid of relations. So the Buddhists rejoice in this conclusion of nirvana. But it is not at all clear that anti-substance Western thinkers would be happy to see their whole empirical world dissolve thus into the void, right? So if we're just relativistic, nothing has its own truth, its own being, and it's just relations, well, the empirical world falls apart. And that's the same. So Pope Francis took this to said, okay, these personal relationships that we're looking at, that is what informs our global nation relationships. He set up this analogy that I think is super powerful. But what is this for the person? What is this interiority that we need? And that will help us understand what is it that the nation, our nation, needs to be, right? So because what's equivalent to the interiority of the person is the nation, right, on the global scale. So Pope Francis wrote a whole encyclical on the interiority of the person called Dilexit Nos, his best encyclical. So Fratelli Tutti, I think, is his most difficult one. Dilexit Nos is his best. And says, and from Dilexit Nos, Pope Francis tells us, it could be said then that I am my heart. My heart is what sets me apart, shapes my spiritual identity, and puts me in communion with other people. Right? So what makes us us is the heart of us is our identity, right? And that's our heart. And he talks way more about this. I've done a lot of videos on Dilexit Nos, but our identity, right? So we have to have this really firm identity. So that's true with nations. They have to have this really firm identity. And I think it's really cool as an American, America is based off of this very similarly to the church. It's like the church, the Catholic Church, in that it's based off of a creed. It's not based off where you're from, necessarily. That's why people can become citizens by knowing the creed of America really well. We have this creed, what we believe, that's our constitution. We're based off of a creed, a set of beliefs, and a document, right? Our constitution. It's really cool. So it's like the church. And just like the church, the church is really hard to enter. There's all these steps to enter, and that's the same to join our country. So we have to have this really strong identity. We got to love what makes us us, our traditions. America, you love the traditions, you love the flag, you love all these things. That's what makes your identity American. And then that's what allows all these sub-identities in America to flourish. I think that's really cool. But what does it mean to not have the heart, to be heartless? Well, Pope Francis talks about that too in Dilexit Nos. And countries, I think, are very often in danger of becoming heartless. He says in Dilexit Nos, this is in section 12, and he's quoting Romano Gaudini, the really great Italian theologian and philosopher, but he's saying, what does it mean to have no heart? He has no heart, hence he can never draw close. Hence he can draw close to no one, and no one can ever draw close to him, right, if we lose our heart. For only the heart creates intimacy, true closeness between two persons. Only the heart is able to welcome and offer hospitality. Intimacy is the proper activity in the domain of the heart. And then the heartless person, he has a name, but it's not important here. So the heartless person is always infinitely distanced even from himself, because a man can enter into himself only with the heart. So only if we've got this strong identity can we offer hospitality. I think that that's really, really important. Only if we have this strong sense of self can we be in a good relationship with others. He goes on describing heartlessness in, Pope Francis does, in section 17. The heart makes all authentic bonding possible, since a relationship not shaped by the heart is incapable of overcoming the fragmentation caused by individualism. Two monads may approach one another, but they will never truly connect, right? So we need this strong identity, not just this, I'm against other people, right? That's this individualism. A society dominated by narcissism and self-centeredness will increasingly become heartless. We find ourselves, he goes on, as other persons disappear from the horizon, we find ourselves trapped within the walls of our own making, no longer capable of healthy relationships, right? So what does that mean for a nation? If we're just focused on ourselves, this nationalism, we're just looking at ourselves, other persons, other nations, right, disappear from our horizon. It's just, what does that person mean to me? What does that nation mean to me? What can I get out of them? And that makes us incapable of having our own healthy, our own heart. We become heartless. And it says, as a result, we become incapable of openness to God. And I think that applies to our wider relationships too, as well. If we're just thinking, what can this person do to me, do for me, or what might they do to me because I'm afraid, then we lose the ability to become intimate, to become really close friends. That applies on the personal level and on the national level. Okay, going back to the subject of our video, which is Fratelli Tutti, I want to finish off section 143 real quick. So the common good likewise requires that we protect and love our native land. We've talked about that. Otherwise, the consequences of a disaster in one country will end up affecting the entire planet. All this brings out the positive meaning of the right to property. So we've gone through the personal, the national, and now we're going to talk about the right to private property. Everyone has a right to private property. I care for and cultivate something that I possess in such a way that it can contribute to the good of all. So we're called, just like with ourselves, we need to cultivate what God has given us and protect it. This is very, very, very important. Why? What's the purpose of national borders? What's the purpose of our private property? For the good of other people, so I can contribute to the good of other people. So it's all very connected. Our personal relationships, our national relationships, and then how we take care of our property, our duties. So I think that section 143, go back and read it, of Fratelli Tutti is really, really powerful, and I wanted to dive just a little bit deeper into it. So I hope that was helpful to you. And we'll be back to our Tuesday, Thursday, just little shorts from Fratelli Tutti till we finish it. So go check those out. But I hope that was helpful to you. You have a very good day. God bless.